Caitlin, should I do an introduction?
If you want to, I was just gonna I'm gonna do a land. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name's Caitlin, and I'm the Director of Public Programs and Special Projects at the museum. Thank you for joining us today as we celebrate the virtual opening of Sonica, the Sound Experience. Today, we are going to start by talking a little bit about the museum and the land that we're on. The museum is in downtown Kitchener in Ontario, and this land has been home to Indigenous people for generations. As settlers, we're grateful for the chance to be here, and we thank all of the past people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, there have been Indigenous peoples who have been the stewards of this place. For the museum's region, those people are the Neutral, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. The museum is on land called the Haldimand Tract that was promised to the Six Nations. That promised land includes 6 miles on either side of the Grand River, which is a huge waterway that runs through our region all the way down to Lake Erie. Now, I can talk about where I am at the museum, but I don't know where you are, and what I just explained may not be true for where you're tuning in from. So I encourage you to check out online resources like native-land.ca to learn more about where you live in your region. Today, we're going to be joined by Richard Burrows, one of the local artists featured in Sonica, the Sound Experience, which you will be able to explore once the museum is able to safely reopen. He will be leading us in a found sound workshop that you can participate in from home. So please join me in welcoming Richard.
Yay, hi everyone. Thanks so much. And thanks everyone at the museum for having me on today to do this found sound. I'm so excited to talk to you over the next half hour about what exactly found sound is and all the different instruments that you actually may or may not know exist in your home or in your garage. Now, the Sonica experience that's happening at the museum is this incredible exhibit that features primarily the idea of sound and now what that is. Now, I have 2 exhibits there. One is made out of large metal pipes, and I'm going to show you a smaller example of that. And the other one is called an ocean drum, which has these beads inside the drum that sort of move around and makes it sound like the ocean. So, as Caitlin said, my name is Rich Burrows. I'm a local artist here in Waterloo, Wellington region. I actually am a percussionist by trade. That's how I make my living, is by basically hitting things. Now, I'm also the artistic director of Open Ears Festival, which is actually coming up the first week of June. And this festival is going to feature an online assortment of different sounds, different experiences, everything from film to our sound exhibits that we have at the museum, as well as some live piano. And there's going to be some sound walks that happen in the Victoria Park area. And there's also going to be some outreach that happens. So if you're interested at all in learning about how to create sound with electronics by recording, we're going to be having workshops online where you can study how to make your own soundscapes with microphones and be able to process it all actually on your own home computer. So anyway, enough about me. I want to get into this Found Sound project with you guys, and we're going to have a lot of fun over the next half hour. I'm going to require a little bit of activity from you at home, but don't worry if you're not able to find anything. It's okay. We'll still be able to discuss the ideas, and you can sort of think about this of how you can kind of create your own home sort of Found Sound drum set. This sort of instrument that you're going to make out of things that you find around the home. Now, what exactly is Found Sound? So basically, sound is the idea of creating vibrations in the air that you can hear. Now, when we talk about found sound, this is specific to musical instruments. Now, found sound itself means that I can find an object, and without manipulating the object, I can create a sound. So for example, I found a kitchen bowl here that I literally just found in the drawers of my kitchen, and if I strike that instrument, it has a sustain to it. Now what that sustain means is the sound is vibrating for a long period of time. And so that's what's happening is basically this instrument is able to vibrate for a long time. Now this is basically just a bowl that I found around my home. So what we're going to do over the next half hour is talk about some of the different ideas of what makes a found sound, where you can find them around your house. And then we're going to have a little scavenger hunt to try and put together quickly our own little percussion setup. And then I'm going to teach you some drum beats that we can play along with our instruments. So basically, how this works is we have 4 different categories of found sound objects. We have wood, so I have myself here a branch. This is actually a piece of a stake that was in the ground that was holding up a tree outside to make sure that it stayed straight, and it actually snapped in half. So now I have 2 objects that I found in my garage. We also have plastic items. So today I have a big plastic garbage can that I took from my garage, and I also found in my recycling here, I have this I just seeded my lawn recently, so I have an empty plastic container that I got from my recycling. And then we have glass. So glass is a really delicate instrument, so we want to be careful that we don't hit them too hard. But we have everything from a wine glass or just a drinking glass, and then we actually have a bottle that I just happened to find in my recycling. Now these instruments, again, can just be struck ever so delicately to try and find the sound. And our last category is, of course, metal. So metal is probably the most resonant of all the categories of sound that you can find. Now, this is actually fence post that I had that I ended up cutting myself. Now, so I did end up manipulating this object itself that I found, but basically the way, when I cut this instrument, it changes the pitch. Now, what's interesting about this actual pipe itself is that, like I said, it sustains, but there are different ways of how you can make this sustain. So for example, I just have a beater here. It's literally a wooden spoon. And if I just hold the metal pipe in my hand, I've got my full hand on it, it doesn't really sound very resonant, right? We talked about this resonance, this idea of vibration. So how am I going to make this more resonant? Well, I think about trying to not hold on to it as much. So maybe I can just pinch it with my fingers, and let's see. Okay, a little more resonance. Now we can hear some higher pitches, but something's not quite right because I should be able to make this really sing. Now, if I just hold this a little lower on this pipe, wow. Now what just happened there? This incredible object that when I was holding with my hand to my 2 fingers to just moving my fingers down the pipe suddenly started to resonate. Now there's this natural phenomenon on the planet Earth that exists in all of these different objects. And so what I do is if I take this object and I measure it and divide it by 9 and then go 2/9 of the way in from either end, they create what's called your nodal point. And a nodal point is where the frequencies, so we have frequencies are these vibrations that go through, that's how they create the sound. And the nodal point is where they crisscross. And so there's this kind of dead zone in the bar. So what's happening is there's these sounds going through this pipe, and right at this point at 2/9 of the way in, so you measure the instrument, you divide it by 9 and go 2/9 of the way in, you have this nodal point, and that little dead zone on this instrument allows me to now create this resonant instrument. It happens on anything. So if I pick up this piece of wood, for example, if I measure it and I grab 2/9 of the way in, now all of a sudden you can hear a pitch. It's no longer just a dead piece of wood. You can actually hear da da da. Now it's singing to me right now. This is a piece of wood I found in my garage and it's singing a pitch. So one of the things that you can do from home that's actually really easy to do is to create some type of surface that allows these instruments to resonate. And so I have right here just some foam that I had around this. This is actually just from a pillow. But you can also make your own resonant foam holders, basically. So this I got from the dollar store. This is a pool noodle. It's just a pool noodle. And I cut it up into 2 halves and I put little 2 arcs in it. And what this does, I can then put this pipe between this and it sits there just like this. And now I can play and it just sings and sings and sings forever. Now if I play it just on the foam itself, it's no longer being suspended at those 2/9, but it still is suspended a little bit, so you can actually still hear this. Whoa, check that out. I have 3 different pitches now. Well, okay, so let's talk about this. Well, how did we get these pitches? So if we think about the way a piano is organized, you have your low end of the piano and the high end, but you see the white and the black keys and they're all exactly the same. But what's actually happening inside the piano is you have strings that are made out of metal, they're long wound wire, and those are stretched over a length of period of time, over a measurement, and the longer the string, the lower the sound. The smaller the string, the higher the sound. Now this is a thing that happens in nature. It's actually a phenomenon that happens in science. So depending on the size of the instrument will create a higher or a lower sound. So if I have a pipe that is smaller in size than the longer pipe, that means this pipe is going to be higher in pitch versus this pipe, which will be lower in pitch. So if I have 3 different sizes, I have large, medium, and small, I will therefore get 3 different sounds. Pretty cool, eh? Now check this out. I found these in my garage. These are just wrenches, just C wrenches in my ratchet kit. Now I found 5 different sizes of these. Now these are just literally, I haven't done anything with them. I just got them in my garage. And if I just put them on the foam, I can actually create 5 different pitches. So I'm actually going to use 2 more wrenches and I'm just going to hit them at the bottom. So I want you to listen to this. So think about the size of, so I have my lowest one here on my left and my highest one on my right. I want you to hear the sound of all 5 of these wrenches. Ah, pretty cool. Now the tuning is really weird, but I think that's the most beautiful part. It's not exactly tuned to a piano. They call it equal temperament, but this is really interesting. It's got this sort of exotic sound to it. Just made out of a garage, out of tools. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? How cool is this instrument? So now we have our 4 categories. We're going to move on and talk a little bit about the glass category. So what's cool about glass here is that this is a very natural resonant object. It's similar to metal, but maybe not quite as long of a resonant sound. So if I strike this, there's a bit of sustain, you can hear that. And maybe even in the pipe, on the bottle. Here, I'll get the bottle in the camera here. It's a pretty dead sound. If I move it over here, maybe I'll put it on some foam. All right, so now we have a little more sound to it, right? So here's some cool things that you can do with the glass that I can actually change the pitch. So I've got myself a little bit of water here, and I can keep striking this, and I want you to listen to what happens to the pitch when I add more water. Oh, cool. So now I'm able to manipulate the sound of things by just simply dipping it in water. So I have myself the ability to change the pitch. So now I can play it a little bit here. If I pour the water out, all of a sudden the pitch gets a little higher. So depending on how much water I can put in the instrument itself, then we suddenly start to get this ability to sort of make the instrument change its pitch. Now, we have another cool feature here. I'm gonna show you right now. If I just take this water and I'm gonna put it in a bowl. I'm gonna put this in here. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put it in a smaller bowl here. One second. So now, if I strike this object, and I spin the water in the bowl, do you hear the sound start to bend? Excuse me. So what's happening is the water is affecting the way that the vibrations of the metal are happening. Ah, very cool. I can also, just by holding onto the pipe, I can dip it into the water and it changes the pitch again. Now what happened there? Listen to that again. So as I dip it into the water, the sound goes down and then comes back up. Pretty cool. So again, what's happening here is it's affecting the length of the pipe, not exactly cutting it off, but simply by stopping where the sine waves, where the frequency stops. So basically, it's making this pipe change its size by putting it in the water. Very cool. Okay, folks. So we've talked about wood. We've talked about plastic. We've talked about glass. We've talked about metal. We now need to find these objects at our home. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to have a little bit of a scavenger hunt. So I need you to get mentally prepared to think about where you're going to find these objects. But we're going to do it in 2 stages. The first stage we're going to do is we have to find 2 objects that we're going to use as the beaters for the instruments. So I'm going to show you some examples of the beaters. Right now I have 2 wooden spoons. It's totally an option. I have 2 wrenches. These are metal. They're a little heavier. I probably wouldn't play these on the glass because maybe the glass might break. I have 2 pencils. I can use the plastic and the rubber ends to play just on the instruments themselves. I have 2 chopsticks that I just happen to have in my kitchen drawer. Right, so I can use chopsticks. And I have these sort of barbecue skewers that I just found again outside. Right, so these are basically just 2 objects. Could be different. I could use a wrench. A wrench and a chopstick. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the next, let's say, 30 seconds, and we're going to try and run through our house and find 2 things. Now, you might find them right away and come back. You might take you a little bit of time. But what's going to happen during this 30 seconds is I'm going to play a little bit of an improvisation on these instruments to give you some inspiration as to how you can play your found sound objects. All right, here we go. On your mark, get set, go! right, that was 30 seconds. Now, hopefully you found two objects that you're able to play on these found sound, whatever it is that you were able to, that we're going to now find next. So don't worry if you're still trying to find two things, it's totally fine. So our next part of our scavenger hunt, and you're going to get a little more time to do this, is we need to try and find, I just want two items. So you can check your garage, you can check your kitchen, for anything that you can find that will make a sound. It could be out of wood, plastic, metal, or glass. Now I want you to be very careful, this is the parental advisory, that if you choose something with glass, that you make sure that you don't hit the instrument too hard that it's going to break. So it's probably, if you are somebody who you know might smash the instrument too hard, maybe we stick with something made out of wood and metal so we know that we're just not going to damage anything. Okay? So, on the count of 3, we're going to have 2 minutes to basically run around your kitchen and your garage and try and find your objects. And in the meantime, I'm going to entertain you with another improvisation. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! There's your 2 minutes. So, I hope you had fun trying to find these objects now. What we're going to do in the next few minutes is we're going to learn a little percussion pattern on your found sound objects. So basically what you're doing is you've basically created a musical instrument that you can play at home. Now again, after this workshop, we want to inspire you to try and build your own found sound objects. And maybe what you can do is take a photo of it, send it into the museum, and we can put it online. We can put it on Instagram, and we can basically show everybody what the instrument is that you created after you learned all about found sounds in this workshop. So what we're going to do first is we're going to think about a pattern, a beat that we're going to be able to play. So you basically now have two objects in your hand. So these are your beaters, and we basically have some idea of sound. So let's say I'm going to focus on just two sounds. So I'm going to take my bowl, I'm going to flip my bowl over. So that's one sound. And maybe I'll take this piece of wood. This is a branch that I found out in the yard. And so I have now two sounds that I can create a pattern with. So music is sort of organized in counts, right? So most pop songs are counted in four. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this is a fairly straightforward pattern that you would maybe hear in a pop song. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about these two objects as maybe our bass drum and our snare drum. So let me think. Let me hear the sound of this. Oh, that's a pretty cool sound. So this is maybe my bass drum. And that's my snare drum. So I have. So here we go. So now what I want us to do is we're going to start really basic. So I want us to think about our bass drum being on counts 1 and 3. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's try this. Okay, just the bass drum. So just think about one of your objects, and we're going to just play that on 1 and 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, pretty easy, pretty easy. Now let's think about our second object. We're going to think about that like our snare drum. So that was going to be on 2 and on 4. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So let's try this, putting them together. So we're going to go bass drum on 1, snare drum on 2, bass drum on 3, snare drum on 4. So basically between the two objects. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Okay, that was pretty cool, but it was also kind of boring. I mean, how many people want to dance to this? Not a lot, not a lot. So we got to make this a little groovier. So in order for us to groove this up a bit, we're going to have to think about some syncopations. Now, syncopation is basically a meaning that it's not on the beat. It sort of feels like it's like sort of off the beat. So let's try and make this a little more difficult. Instead of playing on 3 just once, we're going to play it twice. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so let's try this. So it's just 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, not bad, not bad. Now I think we can get it a little groovier. So now what we're going to add is we're going to add 4 and back to 1. So on the bass drum, it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1. So we're adding in 4 and 1. So we're still, the snare drum stays just on 2 and 4 now, right? So we don't change our right hand, just our left hand. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 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 1. All right, so now we're getting groovy. Now we're getting groovy. So I want to think about this now in a phrase of 4 repetitions. So often in music, what happens is you'll get the 4th phrase, you'll have some kind of fill, so some sort of drum fill that leads us back into the repetition of this. So when we think about this, when we start counting through this, we're going to think about 1, 2, 3, and 4, 2, 2, 3, and 4, 3, 2, 3, and 4, 4, 2, 3, and 4. But on the 4th beat, on the 4th rotation of this phrase, what we're going to do on beats 3 and 4 is we're going to do some kind of crazy solo. So we're going to go 4, 2, 3, 4, and then go back into what the pattern is. So you can do whatever you want on beats 3 and 4 of the 4th measure. All right, so I'm going to count them out loud so to help you along, and we'll play through this whole pattern with our 2 found sound instruments. Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 2, 2, 3, and 4, and 3, 2, 3, and 4, and 4, 2. Solo! 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 4, 2. Solo! 1. Ah, pretty cool, eh? Okay. I think we need to make the solos longer because drummers always want to solo all the time. So this time around, we're going to solo for 1, 2, 3, 4. So all of the 4th phrase of this whole 4-measure phrase is going to be all solos. Okay? So you're basically going to play 3 measures of groove and then 4 measures of whatever you want between your 2 instruments. Okay, here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2, 2, 3, and 4. And 3, 2, 3, and 4. And solo! 1, 2, 2, 3, and 2, 3. Last time! Yeah! All right, good job. Good job. Okay, folks. Man, I'm having too much fun here. That's too much fun. So, here's what's going to happen next is basically we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A in case anybody has any questions about the things that we just talked about today. But moving forward with this, I want you guys to think about how you can create all of the instruments that you have from your house. So obviously with the permission of your parents, you want to try and discover all the different sounds that are out there. Remember we talked about wood, so we can take pieces of wood. You know, if you take a 2x4 in the same way that you use metal pipes, you cut a 2x4, get your dad or your grandpa to cut it, or even your mom, to cut the 2x4 with a saw, and you can change the pitches based on the size of the instrument itself. You know, we have plastic. There's so much plastic on the earth already in the first place. Let's make music with it. So we've got a garbage can. I've got some recycling that I just pulled that out there, right? We have all this fun metal stuff that we played with, pipes and the tools, right? And just make sure, you know, again, asking for permission first, and don't just start taking everything out of your the closets and all out of the garage. So, and basically, we have this ability to be able to create all of this groove just by finding all these instruments around you. So, I don't know, I think that's a pretty cool thing for your kids, or even for me, for that matter, to be able to do this from home. You know, we're all in this lockdown situation right now. How much more fun would it be if you just start to learn how to play instruments you find around your house, right? So I think this is going to be a lot of fun for everyone at home, and I hope that this inspired you to try and come up with a whole bunch of different ideas on how you can sort of create music with instruments that you find just from all around you. So maybe I'll find out if there are any questions in the YouTube chat, and if they're not, maybe I'll do a little bit of playing in the meantime until maybe Caitlin will jump back online to let me know if there's any questions that come up.
Hey, Richard. So I have a couple questions. There
Okay,
isn't any
let's
in
go.
the comment box, but I was going to say, what is your favorite found sound instrument?
Ooh, so I think my favorite found sound instrument is the combination of water and bowl. So anytime that I have the ability to manipulate the sound beyond what just striking it. So I have water in this bowl. So that ability for me to bend the pitch, and I can really affect the sound. So I feel like anything that's metal that I can suspend and dip into water, for me, is my favorite found sounds. Cool. And this is actually something that we do often in percussion. That we have gongs that we play. In fact, I have a tiny little gong here. So I have a little gong here that if you just strike it, right, and I just dip it in the water, you can hear the pitch bend. It happens. It's something that we actually apply in music all the time.
Very cool. My next question is going to be, what is your favorite percussion instrument?
Oh, I'm going to show it to you. Again,
Awesome.
This is the beauty of me having a studio. I can just grab all the instruments that I want to play with. So this is called a snare drum. And this is my favorite instrument. It's the first instrument that I learned to play on. And it's often the instrument that most people learn to drum on. But what I love about this instrument so much is that it comes in so many different sizes and different colors, and you can play really fast on it. And now the snare drum, the reason why they call it a snare drum is because there's this bit of, in this case, it's metal and cable that goes across the bottom. And that's actually called the snare. And so that vibrates and makes that sound. So again, so this is kind of similar to, in talking about found sound, this is basically a plastic head on top, a plastic head on the bottom, and then by striking the drum, it vibrates the head, which makes the sound, ooh, it makes the sound of the snares vibrate. So it's the same principle of science that we just talked about in found sound to make the sound on this drum.
Very cool. I was going to say, just because we have you here and you're one of the artists featured in Sonica, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about the two pieces that you have featured in the exhibition, the ocean drum and the pipeophone?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect.
So the pipeophone, I'll start with the pipeophone. That instrument is actually made out of farm irrigation pipe. So we had a farmer donate to us a whole bunch of lengths of pipe that he was replacing in his farm fields. And so he actually just donated this pipe to us. So what we did is we took this pipe and we started to cut it similar to these in lengths to basically make it into what we tuned it as a chromatic piano. So when you see the instrument, you'll see colors yellow and green, and the green act as the accidentals. So those are all the black keys on the piano, and the yellow notes are all of the naturals. And so basically you're able to play like a C major scale. So if you just hit all the yellow notes, you'll be able to play a C major scale on this instrument. Now, in order for us to be able to make those instruments, we had to use a tuner. So what would happen is we would randomly cut the first pipe, and then we would hit it and hold it up to a tuner so it could tell us what pitch it was. So it would tell us the frequency of what the pitch was. And so by doing that, we were able to saw off, and we could basically tune it by just shaving off ever so slightly the ends of the pipes in order to get that note, whatever the note is that we were finding, to get it perfect. So we tuned this specifically into a chromatic scale. Now, again, we use the same principles as the 2/9. So we measured each pipe, and we took 2/9 of the way in, and then we laid those pipes out on foam. So the actual instrument itself, you'll see, is two large pieces of wood that are in a shape like this, and there's foam underneath them holding them in place. And what this does is it allows them to naturally resonate. So when you strike the instrument, it's on that nodal point. So remember I talked about that the frequency, the sine wave that it crosses. Where it crosses, we put a drill hole into it so that it can hold the instrument in place. And so that's how it's designed. It's basically just these metal pipes that were given to us. We measured them, we found the nodal points, and then we suspended them on this wooden contraption, basically. Now the ocean drum, this is a really cool instrument. So the ocean drum is basically two drum heads. So we're very lucky to be sponsored by Yamaha, and they just had these old bass drum heads. So percussionists, we often play a lot of drum solos and stuff on these heads, and they just get to a point where they no longer sound great when you're drumming on them. So they're either going to go into recycling or dump or whatever. So we took these two heads and we actually suspended them between a piece of fiberglass. And we basically used a climbing rope to wind them all together. So it basically made an inside, sort of trapped the sound inside. We then drilled a hole in the side of the fiberglass, and we put in 30,000 bearing balls inside these two heads. And so what happens then is when you move the 30,000 bearing balls around, they roll around on the head and make the whole drum head vibrate and creates this really cool sound like an ocean. So what's happened, we suspend it off the ceiling, and you can kind of play with the motion of the drum itself, and you can get it to get these waves, these swells of sound. So you'll hear like shh, shh, as it rolls across the head.
Very cool. Yeah, I can attest we got to explore a little bit safely from a distance at the museum, and it's pretty cool. It does sound exactly like the ocean.
Very cool.
I was going to just say we're pretty quiet in the comments today, but
No problem.
feel free to tag photos with at the museum on Facebook or at the museum Kitchener on Instagram and use the hashtag #SonicaKW with your found sound instruments. I was going to maybe do my conclusion, Richard, but then if you want to improvise some sounds and keep playing for a few minutes.
You can conclude. It's all good.
Perfect. Well, I'll do that. But I was just going to say, if you had fun today, Richard will be joining us for another virtual workshop with the Underground Studio Makerspace on Saturday, April 24th at 11 a.m., where we'll be building beats with balloon bongos. And as it's spring break, we will be joined by special guests from Monday through Thursday on our YouTube channel at 11 a.m. So tomorrow we'll be joined by the Canadian Raptor Conservancy, where they'll be teaching us about some of the modern day dinosaurs. So you can learn about some of their birds of prey and how they've evolved from their prehistoric ancestors. So it'll be lots of fun. So everyone have a happy and safe spring break here in Ontario. Thank you for joining us today.
Bye, guys.
Bye.